Hey everyone, Pugs here with one new review for y'all, because that's right, I'm already covering another special. Season 5 had a certain love of those, it seems, or maybe it just really liked messing with the normal 11-minute long episode fare, because let's not forget all of those episode trios. Anyway, today I'm reviewing yet another infamous special, Whatever Happened to SpongeBob, also known as Who Bob What Pants, which, for the record, that is a much better title for describing what the episode is. Well, let me not forget, get it, to say thank you to everyone watching the video today. Unlike SpongeBob's friends in this episode, I do not take you for granted. Alright, I'll stop being cheesy now. Let me just get right into the review. Revisiting Whatever Happened to SpongeBob is a rather thrilling prospect for today's review, because back in the day, this episode used to be quite infamous. However, much like Atlantis Square Pantis, I've found that over the years, this episode has kind of moved away from infamy and fallen more into obscurity, with only a thin air of dislike surrounding it. Like, when was the last time you guys heard anyone discuss this episode? Because it's been quite some time for me. In fact, I think the last time I heard someone talk about this episode was when I originally reviewed it back in March of last year for my written reviews. So that goes to show exactly where this episode is in the fandom perception of today, I think. The beginning few seconds of Whatever Happened to SpongeBob interest me greatly. First, there is simply the title of this episode. I'll go into this during the end of the review, so I'll only mention it briefly here, but the title itself makes me think we've got a mystery episode on our hands. Pair that with not only the design of the title card itself, but the suspenseful, dangerous-sounding music accompanying it, aka the OST Bubble Poppin' Boys, and we've got some excellently cultivated mysterious vibes, which excites me a whole bunch. That excitement stays with me all the way until I realize very quickly that this is not what this episode is going to be. At all. I'll discuss this more near the end as well, because when I was preparing my written review of this episode, I came across some very interesting information that will help bolster that part of my argument. What I will say in the meantime is that a mystery would have been a whole lot better than what we get, because, you see, this episode is unpleasant. We're about a minute into it when we get the whole running, bit, because it's certainly not a gag, of SpongeBob accidentally making his friends' lives worse, with the exception of Squidward, who he doesn't even bother at all in this episode, which is kind of mind-boggling considering that out of all the reasons why SpongeBob's friends would be mad at him, writing one for Squidward would be the easiest. So as it is, Squidward ends up being nasty for no reason. I have multiple problems with this setup for the episode. Firstly, starting with my most nitpicky complaint, everyone calling SpongeBob Idiot Boy doesn't make sense for some of these characters, especially Patrick. The insult itself doesn't even fit like any of the situations because they were caused by SpongeBob's clumsiness, not idiocy. Second, none of the reasons why each character is angry at SpongeBob are enough to justify the extent of their anger, in my opinion. SpongeBob, running from an angry Gary, runs into Patrick, accidentally knocking him over, which ends up ruining Patrick's cake. Why was Patrick even standing outside with a cake in the first place? Why is he so mad about an accident? SpongeBob didn't even do anything to Squidward when the guy comes out and yells at him. He just knocked on his door. Sure, it's in character, but this is nasty, even for Squidward. As for Sandy, I just don't see how it's SpongeBob's fault for making use of an open invitation to her home. Also the water helmets in this episode are designed with an opening at the top for plot reasons. I can understand her being mad, but to take it out on SpongeBob is where I get confused. And for Mr. Krabs, while SpongeBob may have fallen on the pans, it is he who left the kitchen in a state of disarray, with water on the floor, so he can only blame himself. And then, for my last, most important complaint, the entire sequence of events that cause SpongeBob's departure from Bikini Bottom are irritating, annoying, and above all infuriating, and not because of anything SpongeBob does. I'm honestly impressed at how quickly this episode makes me want to teleport myself to Bikini Bottom and fight 4 people simultaneously. Not Gary, though. Never Gary. I mean, for one thing, he had the most legitimate complaint, and at least he did not call SpongeBob that annoying, nonsensical-ass name. Nah, but seriously, these first few minutes are just hard to watch because every single incident, with the exception of Squidward where literally nothing happened, is an accident, and so seeing everyone snap at SpongeBob is fucking horrible because he has done nothing to deserve it. Also, I hate seeing people yell at SpongeBob, like, watch your damn tone. I understand that this sequence is meant to be over the top and show why SpongeBob felt like he needed to leave town, but good fucking lord, there had to have been a better way than this, and if there somehow was not, then this entire plot should have been scrapped and we should have started from scratch. After having a horrible morning, SpongeBob decides to leave Bikini Bottom, and even though we're only 4 minutes in, at this point I'm cheering him on because literally what the hell is everybody on? At least we get some nice looking backgrounds as SpongeBob travels. Unfortunately, Mans has no luck, and he ends up taking quite the tumble. And then... no. Oh please, no, God, don't say it. Don't tell me we're doing an amnesia plot. I think I'm gonna be sick. It is very important that you all know that right now I am shaking my fist at the sky. Curse you, amnesia plots. I cannot stand amnesia plots. They almost never work, and they are dumb and pointless because they almost always end with the person getting their memories back. If they didn't end that way, then they'd be more interesting. Also, they're always scientifically inaccurate, but I could be a little more forgiving about that. So, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about all of SpongeBob's part of the plot before returning to talking about my feelings about what's going down in Bikini Bottom, since this episode is split into his part and the other's part. So, thinking of SpongeBob's part, it's fine. The first few minutes of him not knowing anything about himself are boring, as are the first few minutes of him in New Kelp City. I was a little bit amused by SpongeBob going by Cheesehead, though. The mystery surrounding Bubbles is interesting enough, I guess, but by this point of the episode, I'm grasping at anything to keep me going. I also liked Bubbles being a parody of smoking in that one part. We then get the infamous gross-up shot of SpongeBob asking if there's something wrong with him, and this was at least interesting. I actually don't even find this shot to be all that unappealing. It's actually very impressively painted, like all of the close-ups in this show. We then finally learn why blowing bubbles is a bad idea in New Kelp City, and it's slightly nonsensical because the bubble poppin' boys are extremely unintimidating. At least the chase sequence was entertaining, and it's nice and cathartic to see SpongeBob being lauded as a hero, especially after the horrendous mess that was the beginning of the episode. So this part of the episode was effective in that way, given that it's clear that this episode is going to be about SpongeBob's friends realizing that they took SpongeBob for granted when they see that he's happy somewhere else, and SpongeBob then has to reconcile his conflict with feeling accepted in a new place, but also feeling connected with his home, and having to decide where he belongs. Or, at least, that's what this episode is supposed to be about. Execution, on the other hand, we'll get there. Backing up and taking a look at what's going on with the 4 people who pissed me off in this episode, things don't really get better. After SpongeBob leaves town, we see Patrick knocking on his door. Any of the small bit of hope I have for this episode to not make the characters even more of assholes dissipates as it is revealed that Patrick is knocking on SpongeBob's door because he wants something. Not because he's, apologizing. We don't even know why Sandy shows up during this, so I'm gonna pretend that it's so she could apologize, especially given the guilty look on her face after she reads SpongeBob's letter. See, what really upsets me about this episode is that it is so clearly about SpongeBob's friends taking him for granted despite the fact that they know that they need him. The whole part where they all start crying shows this, and speaking of this part, personally they are nowhere near apologetic enough for me. Mr. Krabs and Patrick think of themselves more than anything. Squidward's line there was at least really funny, which made sitting through that undeserved crying session much easier. And I like that they all decide to work together to figure out how to get SpongeBob back. But on the other hand, I don't like it because they aren't doing this to make anything up to him or because they care about him. They're just doing it because they want something from him. Now, to be fair, I'm only taking it this way because Mr. Krabs takes charge here. But the only person I felt any sincerity from in this entire episode was Sandy. And the way Squidward keeps sabotaging plans isn't even entertaining. At least the way Mr. Krabs ropes him in is fun. We then get the awaited intersection of the 2 plots as Sandy, Squidward, and Patrick find SpongeBob. To very little fanfare. At this point, I don't even care about how underwhelming this climax is. Let me just keep it moving. Seeing SpongeBob blow Patrick and Sandy off was immensely gratifying, so I am happy with that. And then when SpongeBob gets into the limo and it's revealed that Squidward's the one driving, that actually got me laughing hard because I was not expecting that at all. When they bring SpongeBob back to the Krusty Krab, I start getting annoyed again by the way they all just expect SpongeBob to get right back into things and remember who they are. Like, huh? Whatever. And then we finally get a resolution to the amnesia with the destruction of Squidward's egg. So that's nice because, like I said, I don't like amnesia plots. What we don't get a resolution for, however, is the whole entire hot mess that was the first 4 minutes of the episode. One half-assed apology from Mr. Krabs is all we get, as Sandy's doesn't really count since it was done earlier. SpongeBob just goes right back to work in Bikini Bottom, and I remained annoyed that he didn't get the collective apology he deserved. In fact, I'd argue that some groveling was required as well. At the very least, he deserves to know how loved and appreciated he is. Otherwise, what was the point of this episode? Okay. I know I just kind of tore this episode a new asshole. However, I have to say that whatever happened to SpongeBob is, in fact, not all bad. There are some pretty funny jokes in here, like at the very beginning when SpongeBob says hi to the mailman and the guy ends up crashing into a truck. That got a good laugh out of me. And the cutaway gag to Squidward and Mr. Krabs at the beginning while SpongeBob was wholesomely talking about how great his life is was really good too. And later in the episode, SpongeBob's speech as mayor is pretty funny, and the news report that prevents SpongeBob from leaving Bikini Bottom again was also great, especially as the violent guy is cut off. And the ending gag of the episode with Squidward trashing his brain was a good note to end on as well. So there's some good stuff here that helps provide people, and by people I mean me, with some much needed breaks from the bad. Whatever Happened to SpongeBob is a textbook case of interesting premise, flawed execution, and this is true at every level where the episode could have improved itself. And by these levels, I mean title, plot summary, basic plot, detailed plot, and the actual execution of the intended plot. I'm just going to talk about each of these now, except for that last one, because I basically just did that. So the title of this episode implies that something bad happened to SpongeBob, leading him to be missing, indicating some form of mystery here. That's interesting. The basic plot of this episode, SpongeBob in a new setting, away from everyone he knows, and everyone in Bikini Bottom having to deal with his absence, that's interesting. The detailed plot of this episode, SpongeBob leaving town because he met his breaking point after his friends disregarded him, and so they have to track him down and apologize because they care about him, that's still interesting. And yet, despite every level of this episode's premise being interesting, this episode fails to act on this potential. As I was thinking about how this episode could have been better, which in my opinion the best way would have been simply making this episode a mystery plot, I started remembering the existence of those What If SpongeBob Was Gone shorts. Do you guys remember those? I hadn't thought of them for some time before I was reviewing this episode, and when I thought about them, I started thinking, man, if this special was like these lovely little shorts, with SpongeBob being missing right from the beginning and his friends realizing it and then teaming up to solve the mystery and track him down, that could have been amazing. And right after that is when I realized or learned something very interesting. See, these shorts were made to promote this special. Yes, you heard that right. For the purposes of promotion and advertisement, the creative team created not one, not two or three, but 4 shorts that are better than the actual special episode they are advertising. I feel like there's nothing more I can add. I'll just let you all sit with that. And speaking of nothing else to add, I have no more to add on about whatever happened to SpongeBob. It's just not that good. Beyond the sparse moments of actually good comedy, the episode is either actively annoying, infuriating, or boring. It's also frustrating because of the sheer potential this episode had, and keeping everything in mind, I'd say this episode fits best in my barely tolerable tier, where it comes in with a score 4.2 out of 10. Perhaps it comes as a surprise that it didn't land in bad. I heavily considered putting it there, but I didn't hate what I was watching for the most part, and it helps that the episode spent more time boring me rather than infuriating me. If the balance was more skewed towards the latter, then this episode would be bad for sure. And no matter where I put it, there is no doubt that Whatever Happened to SpongeBob is the worst special of Season 5. As always, I'm ending this review with some closing thoughts of mine. Hoo boy, it's been a while since I tore an episode a new asshole like this. I love being positive. I mean, this is my favorite show in the world, but sometimes it can be nice to get all the negativity out in a scathing review. And I remember when I wrote this one last year, I had a ton of fun doing so. I had just as much fun revisiting and revising the review for this script. And this review was very long, and thank God for that. I feel like my reviews for special episodes have been getting shorter and shorter, which should not be the case. I won't promise that it'll stay like this forever, but I'll do my best to review those episodes to the extent that they deserve. And I think that's just about it for me. I've got nothing else I can really say, except that I like the title Who Bob What Pants more than Whatever Happened to SpongeBob. Just another way the advertising was better than the actual episode. Anyway, I think I'm gonna end the review here, and I'll see you all in the next review.